Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I'm your host, Tina Eichenberg, and this is a space where transformation begins. Here, we dive deep into energy healing, self-care, and the power of mindset to help you break free from old patterns and design a life that feels aligned, vibrant, and authentically you. Each week, we explore the tools, techniques, and real-life experience that guide us toward lasting healing and growth. Because true metamorphosis isn't just about change. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Now, let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I am your host, Tina Eichenberg, and today we're talking about the mother wound healing without shame. So healing our mother wound without feeling that guilt or shame that might come along with it. Because you see, over the past week, I was in the middle of a session with someone, and this beautiful soul who has been doing all the work, showing up for herself, told me something that kind of took me back. She said, I feel guilty for even admitting or feeling like I have a mother wound. I feel like I'm betraying her just by saying that out loud. And I get it, because I've been there. I lived with that for years. And I know that some of you are living with that unspoken truth within your nervous system. I know you can just feel it. So I want to break down some things that I felt when I was going through this healing of my mother wound. So a few things that I would ask myself, or I would think to myself, is maybe I'm just being too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much from my mom. Maybe all of this pain is my fault. Was I not a good enough daughter? Oh, the number of times I asked my husband that during this healing process is too many to count. But there was a time when I couldn't even say the word mom without a lump just forming within my throat. I have asked myself this countless times. Am I being too sensitive? Not because I truly believed it, but because somewhere along the way, I learned that having deep emotions was wrong. And the truth is, I don't remember anybody telling me that I was too sensitive, but I do remember the looks, the emotional shutdowns, the stop being so dramatic, the tones. I remember being told that I need to suck it up, that I need to stop crying. I was made to feel like I was making a big deal out of nothing. And those messages were spoken with such frustration and confusion. And maybe they were even spoken with love, but they landed in my little body. And it showed up like emotions are bad, that my tears were inconvenient. And if I wanted to be loved, I needed to stay quiet. I needed to be easy and not too much. So I stopped crying in front of people. I would shove my feelings down. I stopped speaking up for myself. I learned to regulate my emotions by repressing them. And that's how a child who feels deeply becomes an adult who second guesses every emotional wave. An adult who wonders, am I overreacting? Or worse, convinces themselves that they are. Now I know I wasn't too sensitive. I know this now. I was simply unprotected. And when a child feels deeply in a space where emotions aren't held, they build up walls instead of trust. They create wounds. Sensitivity without support feels like shame. Sensitivity with safety, it's where your intuition grows. It's where compassion blooms. So how do we reframe this? When we feel that surge of emotion, we pause, we listen, we remind ourselves, I'm allowed to feel this. There's wisdom in this wave. This is my heart speaking to me, and it's time to start listening. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a frequency. It's how we know what is real. It's how we connect. It's how we heal. And then there's the next layer. Maybe I expect too much from my mom, or maybe I expect too much. Am I expecting too much from my mom? That question doesn't come from entitlement. It comes from heartbreak. It shows up in quiet wishes. I wish she'd call more. I wish she told me she was proud of me. I wish she tried to understand me. I wish she could hold space for me instead of making the conversations about her or getting defensive. I wish she felt safe. But then the shame creeps in, whispering, maybe I'm just asking too much. The truth is, we're usually not expecting too much. We've just been taught to expect less. When you're a child who doesn't get their emotional needs met, especially consistently, you start to question those needs. You internalize the message that you're longing to be seen, supported, and soothed is too much. It's unrealistic and it's selfish. So you shrink yourself. You become the easy one, the good one, the one who can read the room. And instead of expressing your truth, you simply hide it. And by the time you're an adult, even your simplest desires, like wanting a meaningful conversation or feeling emotionally safe, can feel like too much to ask. But let's be clear about what we're all expecting. We're not asking our mothers to be perfect. We're not asking them to undo the past. We're likely asking for things like accountability instead of excuses, presence instead of performance, understanding instead of silence, and the freedom to express ourselves without guilt. That's not too much to ask for. That's the foundation of secure love. And sometimes our mothers simply cannot meet us in that space, not because we're asking for too much, but because they never received those things either. They might still be surviving from what they have not healed from. They might love us the only way they know how, but that doesn't mean it's the way that we need. That gap between what we needed and what we received, that's the wound. And you get to name it without shame. You get to grieve it without guilt. You get to want more without making her the villain. So next time that question sneaks in, am I expecting too much? Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what is my inner child longing to receive? Can I begin to meet that need myself with love, with ritual, with community? Can I hold space for what is missing and still honor what is there? Healing the mother wound does not require demonizing your mom. It simply asks you to stop abandoning yourself to keep her comfortable. And finally, the one that aches the most. Is this pain my fault? Was I not a good enough daughter? That question does not come from logic. It comes from heartbreak. It comes from trying to make sense of the emotional abandonment, disconnection, and inconsistency, especially when it's from someone you are biologically wired to love. And let's be honest, children are wired to believe that everything is their fault. If a caregiver is emotionally unavailable, critical, or distant, a child doesn't think, "Ugh, my mom must be struggling with unresolved trauma." Mm-mm. The child thinks there must be something wrong with me. I'm too much. I didn't do enough. If I were better, maybe she would love me the way I need. And that does not go away as an adult. It doesn't just disappear. It lingers, even decades later. It whispers through your nervous system every time you feel unseen or unloved. Why do we blame ourselves? Because sometimes self-blame is less painful than facing the truth. The truth that someone we loved, we needed, couldn't or wouldn't show up for us the way that we longed for. And so, we take on that weight. We try to earn love. We try to be perfect. We try to raise up to their definition of perfection. But here's what we should have been told. You were never responsible for that pain. You were never responsible for your mother's love. You were not responsible for her moods. You were not responsible for her wounds. You were not responsible for her healing. You were never meant to parent your parent. This pain is not your fault. Your worth was never the problem. Only her ability to see it was. Maybe she did love you. Maybe she still does. In the only way that she knows how. But if that love came with conditions, silence, control, or absence, it makes perfect sense that your inner child would still be asking, what did I do wrong? The answer is nothing. You were simply a child who wanted to be seen, supported, and safe. That's not being ungrateful. That's being human. So maybe the question isn't, was I good enough? Maybe the question is, what part of me still believes that unconditional love must be earned? What would I say to this little girl who asked me this? What do I need to feel safe in my own heart right now? And maybe even this. What if I was a good daughter and the pain still happened? That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of unmet needs. And those needs that still need to be met with tenderness, truth, and the healing that you're giving yourself. So here's where the shift happens. Healing the mother wound isn't about blaming your mom. It's about choosing you. It's not about making her wrong and tearing her down. It's about acknowledging that your pain is real and that your healing matters more than protecting someone else's comfort and narrative. Choosing you means no longer abandoning yourself. In the hope of being chosen, loved, or finally understood. It means I can hold compassion for her story and still honor my truth. You could recognize that she did the best that she could, even though it still wasn't what you needed. You can see her wounds without ignoring your own. And that's not betrayal, that's emotional integrity. The mother wound begins to heal when we stop waiting for someone else to validate it and validate our pain. When we stop hoping one day that she'll finally say the words that we needed to hear. And instead, we say them to ourselves. We begin to reparent ourselves in ways we always needed. We stop shaming her for being needy, emotional, and too much. And we start meeting her with love. We say, I'm not too needy. I'm allowed to take up space. I get rest. I get to feel. I never had to earn love. My worth I never had to earn love. My worth was always intact. And with that, something powerful happens when we do this. The aches in our heart start to loosen. The weight we've carried begins to lift, because the more I gave myself what I once craved, the emotional safety, the honesty, the permission, the less power she had over me. The less I waited For her to change, the more I changed. The more I gave myself permission to be whole without her validation, the more I stepped into my own authority. That's when the real healing began. And it didn't all happen at once. It happened in micro moments, in quiet tears and ugly cries, in the choice to pause and breathe instead of lash out and shut down, in forgiving myself for the ways I'd overgiven or contorted myself to avoid rejection, in recognizing that my grief and my growth could exist side by side. Because healing the mother wound also involves grieving the mother that you didn't have, letting go of the fantasy version of her so that you can embrace you, the version that's no longer waiting to be chosen, the one who chooses herself every single day, who doesn't shrink in guilt, who lets herself feel joy without apology. That's what freedom looks like. And that's what becomes possible when healing the mother wound and starting to choose yourself. So now imagine this. You walk into a conversation and you don't shrink. Your nervous system doesn't brace for impact. You don't scan the room to see who's safe. You already know that you are. You speak clearly without apologizing for existing, without softening your truth to keep the peace. You say no and don't spiral into guilt or second guessing. You don't over-explain. You don't write a follow-up text to make sure they're not mad. You trust that your boundaries don't make you selfish. They make you sovereign. You let yourself rest without feeling guilty. You stop performing for worth. You take a nap, you skip the laundry. You lie on the floor if you need to and cry. And none of it threatens your value. You no longer confuse productivity with love. You understand that being is enough. You begin to trust other women, really trust them. You soften into connection instead of performing perfection. You release the need to compete or compare. You let yourself be seen in your joy, in your mess. And you begin to believe that not all intimacy leads to pain. You speak more gently to your inner child. When she gets triggered or scared, you don't shove her away. You don't silence her in shame. You sit with her, listen, and hold space. You let her cry. You tell her that she is safe now. You remind her that the life she's living is not the one that she was born into. It's the one you're building together. You show up in relationships without fear or obligation, but from fullness. You show up in relationships not from fear or obligation, but from fullness. You don't mold yourself to who they want you to be. You don't anxiously chase love. You let love meet you where you're at. You choose partnerships, friendships, and communities that reflect your wholeness, not your wounds. You begin to mother yourself the way you always needed, with tenderness, with consistency, and with presence. You ask yourself questions like, what do I need today, my love? You create rituals that make you feel grounded and connected. You become your own safe space. So what happens next? What happens once you heal and clear away your mother wound? You begin to feel free, not just in your choices, but in your body. You begin to feel whole, not just in moments of peace, but in the midst of chaos too. You begin to feel home within yourself. You stop living from the pain of the past and start creating your life from the present. You stop chasing that version of yourself that is more likable, more perfect, more digestible. And instead, you anchor into the real you. You begin to live your healed life, not continue to survive in your unhealed life. That's what happens when you heal your mother wound. Not with shame, not with blame, but with sovereignty. You reclaim your voice, you restore your nervous system, You remember who you were before you were taught to hide your softness. This is the beginning of your return to yourself. And it's not just healing, it's liberating. If this spoke to your soul, if you're ready to stop carrying that wasn't yours to hold in the first place, I want to invite you into something deeper. Join me inside the Metamorphosis Project University membership. The month of June will help to clear the mother wound on an energetic level so that you can do more of the conscious work, giving you that space to work through it and to heal from it. We do this work together. Weekly group clearings, self-care tools, and support that actually meets you where you're at. Or you can book a free energy clarity session to see if you have a mother wound and what we can do to help you to clear it. The link is in the show notes. Your healing doesn't have to be heavy. It can be sacred. It can be soft. It can be shared. You are worth spending your time on. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I hope today's episode brought you inspiration, joy, and a spark of empowerment. Remember, transformation is an incredible journey, and every single step you take towards self-care and healing brings you closer to the life you truly desire. If this episode uplifted you, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us to share this journey of hope, resilience, and joy with many listeners. For more tips, support, and inspiration, come and visit us at designyourexistence.com. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep shining brightly. You are absolutely worth every bit of love and care you give to yourself. Take care, stay joyful, and be well.